Welcome back to your Productivity Pulse, a place where we go beyond the checklist and explore what productivity really looks like in everyday life. June is Brain Injury Awareness Month, and today we're talking about life after concussion and how we can adapt our lives, our work, and our productivity when our brain insists we do things differently. Sometimes productivity isn't about getting more done. It's about understanding what your body and your brain need and finding a new path forward. To help answer those questions, I'm joined by Seth Mendelsohn and Lara Cottam, who share both their experience and their expertise on navigating concussion recovery. Let's dive in.
So thank you so much for having me today, Michelle. My name is Lara Cottam. I'm currently a student at Queen's University, and I'm studying biochemistry. I'll be entering my second year this fall. So a little bit about me. I graduated from St. Peter in 2024, but I decided to do a victory lap after receiving 3 concussions prior to that. Um, and then I began my first year of university in the fall of 2025. So by taking that extra year, I'll go back a bit. So I received my first concussion in December of 2019, where I got hit in the head with a frisbee during gym class. And then that started some symptoms, and I never really recovered from my first concussion there.
Can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah, of
Now, I
course.
just wanted to ask, you're out playing in gym class and somebody throws a frisbee and you get hit in the head. So it wasn't even that you were playing rugby like my son when he got hit in the head. People say, oh, that's a dangerous sport. You can expect concussion. You were just in regular gym class and you got hit in the head with a frisbee. Now, what did they do to support you in that moment?
No, it was a very minor accident, and we didn't figure out that I actually had a concussion until I believe it was 3 or 4 days later when I started having symptoms. But it was a very minor hit to the head, and nobody really suspected anything. So I just kept playing and went on my day as normal. And then, yeah, I remember waking up with a pretty terrible headache. And then we were thinking back the last week or so, what had happened, anything different, because this isn't normal for me. And then I was like, oh yeah, I got hit in the head a few days ago. Maybe that has something to do with it. And maybe it was the area that I got hit in the head with. I'm not sure why it caused a concussion, but it really can be anything. It doesn't have to be a major hit to the head or a major fall or anything. It's
Yeah. And so then at that time, did you start having symptoms where you couldn't follow through with certain schoolwork, or was it just headaches, or what happened with that?
so throughout my 3 concussions, the major symptom was headache and then trouble concentrating, sensitivity to light and noise. So that was the major thing that just fell off. And then there was also like the mental symptoms, so anxiety that really caught on, and then extreme fatigue as well.
Okay. And so then you had two more concussions in what was the timeline of your other concussions?
My second concussion occurred in September of 2021. And that's when I was group riding in my triathlon practice and I crashed. And I never hit my head, but it was just the whiplash and the impact of falling. And that one was a little bit more obvious. It didn't take as long for symptoms to show up, but yeah, a couple days later, I woke up with the worst headache of my life. And then that's when my parents decided to take me to the ER.
Okay.
Yeah, I think something's up. So,
That must have been pretty scary, especially because you had no specific hit on your head, but the actual whiplash created the concussive experience without an actual impact. And then from there, you went to the ER, you went with your family, and what were the next steps that they took?
so there they diagnosed me with a concussion, and then we followed then the return to learn and the return to sport
Protocols.
sorry, protocols. And it was really just taking it step by step and seeing my limits and everything because that one was worse than my first concussion. And of course, with I hadn't fully healed from my first concussion, I was still having symptoms. So then to add on to that, it was like a cumulative effect there.
And did you start to see some effects in your schoolwork and how you were trying to manage just with your time? Did you start losing time sometimes? I know that was something when my son had concussive experience. Sometimes he would either lose time or just found it difficult to organize things. What was your experience?
It was similar to that. I found that my days felt so much shorter because I was sleeping so much. So I needed to rest and relax a lot more than normal. And my parents, it was really like a group effort because my parents did so much for me. And thankfully, I was living at home when I was in high school. And so I would go to school, it was like a quarter day, so an hour and 15 minutes. And then my day would kind of be over there. And then I would sleep for most of the day.
And how long did that last for then? So that was after the second concussion, and then there was a third one.
Yes, and then my third concussion was in March of 2023. Or sorry. No, sorry. My third concussion was in March of 2024. So that is when I was getting into a car and I just didn't duck enough and I hit my head on the car. And that was all it took to get that third concussion.
Wow. So really that first concussion of 2019, 2021, 2024, and then you were able to graduate with accommodation, with support. What happened? How did you make it through?
Yeah, so then I had to drop some classes. Just I wasn't able to keep up with the course load that I was taking. I knew I wanted to go into sciences, and so I was taking biochemistry, kinesiology, math. It was just too much of a workload while trying to recover from a concussion. So that is when I sat down with my guidance counselor and we're like, hey, what can we do? Um, and then my parents were also quite involved as well, trying to help me out with, I knew I wanted to go to university and like we just weren't sure how that was going to work out with the way that I was functioning. So we decided to take out some of the hard classes, to drop them, and to put in easier classes. So I ended up doing a co-op, peer tutoring, and then I dropped the harder classes so that I'd still have the credits to graduate that year, but I wouldn't have the classes that I needed to get into the university program that I wanted.
And so then at this point, from a mental health point of view, if you don't mind me asking, how are you managing, this is a lot to handle for a young woman who has goals, who now feels hamstrung by this concussion and not able to get through and be the person that you knew that you were before with the kind of organizational skills, the timelines, like everything that you had in your head. How did you manage to adjust your timelines?
Yeah, so that was a big thing as well. That was also one of the reasons why I decided to take a victory lap was that my mental health wasn't doing very well. And as someone who is such a high achieving person, and I was working really hard in my classes, I was doing well in my classes, and then as well, I have a friend group that I'm always surrounded by who are also very high achieving and they're getting into these programs and achieving their goals. And it was kind of like, oh, I have to wait for mine. Like I can't be at that level yet. I have to watch everyone move on before I then get to catch up, sort of thing. So yeah, I did struggle there. And then that's when I was definitely experiencing some anxiety and depression and things like that, which yeah, it was hard to talk about at the time, but now looking back, I think it's easier to talk about. So, Yeah,
That's
that was hard.
Thank you so much for sharing that piece, because I think it's really important for people to understand that you can have all the accommodations in place, reorganize yourself, have a different way of thinking about your productivity and how you want to get things done, but you have to
Mhm.
deal with the heart and all of the other mental health pieces that can go with having to let go of your dream and be able to start stepping into what you have now and what you want now. And
Yeah.
what you're able to do, because your body sometimes just doesn't listen to you.
Yeah, exactly. But now looking back, I know at the time it felt like it was the most important thing and it was such a big decision. And I always tell my parents this. I'm like, 1 year, like that was the best decision that I could have made because I don't know what I would have done if I went away to university when I just after graduating high school. I don't think I would have done well. I had different goals and everything. So now it's just, yeah, I'm really glad that I did that extra year and that I was able, and I went from being a part-time student, I was only doing 2 classes because I only needed to catch up on 4 classes. So I did 2 semesters of just 2 classes. And then the rest of the time I was working part-time. So it was a pretty like relaxed,
Nice.
they were difficult classes, but it was like they're the classes that I enjoy. They're the sciences, the maths, things like that.
Nice. We're going to move forward then into your story. You got into university. Did you have to have some accommodations set in place for you when you went into first year, or what were you able to put into place in order to ensure your success?
So I kind of went in and I did a bit of a test trial. I was like, let's see what I can do, how much I can study. And I went from having 2 high school classes a semester to 5 university classes a semester. So that was a big change. And then of course the speed of everything. Everything is so much faster. But I think I adjusted pretty well and not having any accommodations. But I think I was so mentally prepared for that challenge that was to come that yeah, I really threw myself into that. But then the end of my first semester, when I was doing my exams, because I don't have a whole lot of experience with exams, I was caught in that COVID wave during high school, so we didn't have all the exams that we were supposed to write. So yeah, going into those, I was feeling okay, stressed, which is very normal. And then getting the results back and and also during the writing process, that's when I found a lot of my symptoms to come back. Just having to concentrate for 3 hours straight and then doing such difficult, sorry, doing such how do I say this?
You're doing great.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I just have to find a
No,
word.
that's okay.
Um,
The increase in the acuity of what they're asking you to do, so that you had to focus on more difficult information in shorter amounts of time to be able to attempt to achieve your goal.
exactly. Yes. That's exactly what it was. And then, yeah, getting the results from that. I mean, I walked out of every exam and I was not feeling great. And I know it was like my first set of university exams, like they're not going to go great. But yeah, after that, that was when I was like, okay, I think I need some accommodations here because my brain wasn't processing at the speed that it used to, which was also frustrating. Anyway, so then for my second set of final exams, I got accommodations put in place. And that was just some extra time and then a smaller room with less distractions. So yeah, that helped a lot. And then you could see, I mean, I felt better during my exams, and then you could then see the results from the grades that came out. They were significantly higher than the first semester. So yeah, that was a bit of a relief that those helped.
Now, I want to shift over to Seth Mendelsohn, who is the founder of Headsup CAN. But maybe can you share with our audience about what is Headsup CAN? I had done a small segment in episode 11 about the nonprofit that you run, but I wanted to have you on and so that you could speak to it and the importance of it and what's happening in Canada in education and research and all things concussion and brain injury awareness.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And obviously, it's just amazing to hear Lara's story because we got to meet her through our own education program and to see where she is now and thriving and doing amazing makes us just really happy. And so, thank you for sharing that. A little bit about the Heads Up Concussion Advocacy Network. So, I am the co-founder. I started this with my friend Ryan Sutton, and I met him in university. And I had sustained my concussion in high school. I got mine in football, so one of those sports that you do expect concussions maybe would occur. And I remember when I was going through it, this was back in 2014, I was told it was a mild concussion, you'll be back in 1 to 2 weeks. Well, that 1 to 2 weeks turned into 1 to 2 months. And a lot of what I started to experience as a result of that was these mental health symptoms that I didn't at the time correlate with understanding that it could be related to concussions because we never really talk about concussions and mental health and the direct link that they have. And so I went through things I never experienced before, and they were kind of talked about it too, but like anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, depression, irritability, like all of these things, maybe not being that level of a student that I was at before and not being able to be I don't know if I was a high performer or high achiever, but I like to think I was, anyways, the point being the concussion really impacted me a lot mentally and how I viewed social dynamics and my school relationships. And when I met Ryan in university, he had suffered 5 concussions. He's since had 8 total. And the two of us started just talking about the lack of education that our support system had as well. Like, yes, it was one thing that we didn't have this understanding of the injury, but our parents didn't, our teachers didn't, our coaches didn't really know how to properly support us during that, and it felt very alienating. And so that led us to starting Heads Up Can. At the time, it was just a social purpose brand where we were selling shirts and spreading awareness. It's since shifted to a nonprofit organization where we do education programs, events, and just continue to have these types of important dialogues because it is still, even 10 plus years later since my concussion, there's still so much that gets lost in translation in one's recovery and how to approach it and the proper way to approach care and trying to bring that evidence-based information directly to people.
Well, how did the two of you meet?
Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of start on that part. But basically, we run an education program where we go into high schools. And it's specifically in Ontario that this program is run currently for the Specialist High Skills Major program. And we essentially provide concussion education. It becomes like a full day where we use the latest evidence-based information and the students receive a concussion awareness certificate of completion as a result of it. We went into Lara's school and we're talking about it. And I remember just like the conversation that we had because she had come up to us, and I'll let her kind of speak to it on her app, but it was along the lines of like, I didn't know other people had this or were going through this. And it was just one of those things that we've experienced a lot throughout our community where because you feel so alienated from everyone else, from your experience, to hear someone else, it can be very supportive.
So you just walked right up to him?
Yeah, so during the concussion education program that both him and Ryan ran at my school, they talked about their stories as well. And I resonated so much with it. And especially the mental health and the prolonged recovery that they had both experienced. And it kind of clicked. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. So, and I had never had that before. And so then afterward, I reached out just on Instagram and I was like, hey, like this really helped me. I'm so glad that other people are experiencing something similar and that I can relate to. And we can kind of maybe work as a team and like really help others as well. So then, yeah, I was like, hey, would I be able to volunteer and like help out because I think this is really important. And then they were like, yeah, of course. So yeah, that's kind of how we all came together.
Seth, you're moving into a research project right now. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, we're taking a lot of the data from our education program that we're using to extrapolate for research. We do have a research committee that is led by Dr. Michael Jorgensen, and they're focusing and kind of working towards developing specific projects for research related to the sport related concussion experience and related to a few other facets that is still in development. But right now, I think a lot of what we're trying to do is, because our program has now kind of expanded and we've done programs and partnerships with the Holland Bloorview Research Institute, in particular with the Nobel Lab, as well as at University of Toronto with the Mental Health Physical Activity and Recreation Center, or MPARC. And through those programs, we've been able to collect a lot of data, and our own concussion program as well, because we've now educated over 1,000 students. And so the amount of people that we've now encountered in terms of providing this education and how it's shifted their own thoughts about what a concussion is, if they've even had a concussion, because a lot of students don't know, and a lot of these injuries do go undiagnosed. And it's been really fascinating to see all of that data compiled. So we are working within that to put together some research papers.
You made this decision at some point to start Headsup CAN and to set this time aside in your life. Did it interfere with you starting in your career, or has this become your career? Have you dedicated the time now to this as a new career path?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think there's been a lot of push and pull factors that come when you start something that you're so passionate about. Because when we originally started it as just like let's sell t-shirts and raise money, and we donated $2,500 to the Canadian Concussion Center in our first year, we knew that this was something that was so fulfilling and so personal to us. And we kept trying to figure out where we can go with our pursuit towards it. And my co-founder Ryan decided to do his master's and went more on the academic route. I started to get more into the media and telling people stories. So telling concussion testimonials, podcasts, things of that nature. I started to really feel passionate about, because, I was meeting so many people and I think it's important to understand when it comes to concussions, like, everyone's story is so individualized. And that's why it can feel so alienating as a result, is because not everyone can understand what you're going through. And so I really felt passionate about bringing those stories to life in unique ways. And so we were kind of working towards these paths. COVID happens. It kind of allows you to, or in that moment, it was a moment in time where we were trying to figure out what the next step for Headsup was. How can we, really make an impact in the community? And we turned it into a nonprofit. And as you turn a business into a nonprofit, you start understanding that from like a personal level, it's kind of hard to make it a full-time job. It's a full-time passion commitment, but to make it a full-time job is kind of challenging. So there's been a lot of years where I've had to multitask doing other work. I started my own media company 3 years ago to continue fulfilling that passion, but everything keeps drawing me back to Headsup CAN and the work we're doing. And we've been able to host events and podcasts and documentaries, and all of that has been a testament to just the passion I think Ryan and I have to educating and empowering people going through this.
No, thank you so much, because what it really does is it tells us that as someone is building their life, that we all can dedicate time to a passion of ours, to something that can bring people together and also move the movement forward. And that's, one of the reasons why it was so important for me to have both you, Seth, and you, Lara, here today, so that we can have these bigger conversations and have intentional time where we all can share our story and what it is that we're working on and what we're wanting to try and achieve in our worlds. As we're just starting to wrap up here, I would love for you just to share a final thought, something that you can offer people who've had a concussion. What is something that they can do, a practical tip, something that can help them as they're in their recovery to take steps towards their own goals?
Okay. For me, like you said, every concussion is so individualized. And even within my 3 concussions, they were all so different in the way that I took advice and recovered. But actually, recently, there have been a couple of people who have reached out and said, "Hey, I got a concussion. Like, I'm struggling with this. Here are my symptoms. What do you recommend?" And things like that. And I sent over some resources. I actually sent over the video of the concussion summit so that they could hear my story and kind of hear what it was like for me going through concussions. And I think that really helped. And then, as well as the return to learning, return to sport guides, just because it's so simple and it gives you a way of measuring how you're recovering. So that was a major thing. And then, of course, just celebrating the small victories, which I think that also helps with, because then you can see, oh, I went from step 1B to 2A and sort of that. And then, of course, recovery isn't linear. So that might fluctuate as well. So, yeah, it's finding your own limits and then being able to then test them a little bit every day and to go beyond that so that you can recover and you can do the most that you can in your state.
Thank you so much. Seth?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I think, unlike any other injury, there is this element of self-advocating and self-assessment, right? It's not like you have a broken hand that, for 4 to 6 weeks you're in a cast and rehab and you'll be fine, because the timelines are so unpredictable, the recovery is so unpredictable, the symptoms that you experience can feel so unpredictable as well. There can be this, as Lara mentioned, this non-linear path where you feel like you're having good days and then you have a setback because you pushed it too hard. But we need to understand the importance of self-advocating for ourselves, and sometimes being vulnerable can allow us to have an empathetic dialogue with someone. You might feel worried or afraid to talk to your teacher or to your employer or coworker about the symptoms you're going through because you think in your head that they may perceive it one way. But if you don't give them the opportunity where you can express yourself in a vulnerable fashion and they can actually empathize with what you're going through, you're never going to have that breakthrough. I think that's really important. And I think, on a final note, like, there's also a lot of really amazing organizations out there that are trying to do more work to help. PACA being one in the community of Peterborough, but there's also like the Ontario Brain Injury Association, Brain Injury Canada. There's so many organizations out there with amazing resources. And I would definitely encourage people to look into that if they're, experiencing it, depending on what location they're at or what region. There might be something in their actual own city or province that could really help them out.
I want to thank Seth and Lara for coming today and sharing their stories and their thoughts and their tips and all those pieces, so that as each one of us step into our lives, there is someone in our lives that has experienced a concussion. I ask that people keep their ears open and their eyes open and help and are willing to support. Like Seth said, be there and be available so that they can be vulnerable and have a conversation about their concussion. They just may need a little bit of support in a few areas, and that just makes us all human. And that's really what this is all about, is finding ways that we can tap into our humanity and to be able to help other people. Thank you so much, Seth, Lara, and I look forward to seeing all the amazing things that both of you do in the future. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Productivity Pulse. You're not alone in this. We're all learning how to navigate our time in a way that actually supports our lives. If you want a simple place to start, grab the free Time Disruptor Checklist in the show notes and join the community. Let's start noticing what's getting in the way so we can begin to make the shift. Remember, intention plus accountability equals productivity. Until next time, keep listening to your pulse.